Hello, my name is Sarah Lustig, and I am a spiritual healer and a licensed therapist. And today I'm coming on to talk to you about why traditional therapy will not help you heal and how the mental health field is ultimately not helping. So, one of the first points I want to make is that, in the society that we currently exist in, that we currently live in, anxiety, depression, and trauma are all normal. They are all a result of living in a society that has so many broken systems. And what I mean by that is systems of health. So our healthcare system, physical healthcare, going to the hospital, it's things like that where it's so much money for people, it's so expensive. How insurance works and how the process of things work. Mental health, our mental health field, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more. The systems of oppression that keep people back and hold people back and from being able to experience happiness and being able to get in touch with joy because they've been dealing with these systems of oppression for hundreds of years in some cases. And so understanding that the world that we live in is a result of generational pain and generational trauma that has taken place, and anxiety and depression and experiencing trauma as a result of that is unfortunately normal. And so the mental health field doesn't take this into account. They make these diagnoses as something that is wrong with the person. And we need to understand that trauma decontextualized over time actually becomes personality. And personality, what's diagnosed as personality disorder. So we come from this place of wanting to diagnose people and to put people in a box and make people wrong. And, that's a really big challenge that I have with the mental health field of understanding that there's nothing wrong with you if you have anxiety or depression. If you have, if you've been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder or bipolar disorder, it might be that you don't actually have anything wrong with you, but those things that you were diagnosed for are actually a result of relational and developmental trauma. And when we understand and heal the root of the trauma, then the behaviors that show up that fall under diagnosing in that category aren't as significant. So understanding that what trauma actually looks like and how we heal the root of that trauma, and not just focusing on the diagnosis or the label and managing those symptoms. So often diagnoses are given based on eliminating perceived negative behaviors and not understanding how these behaviors are in fact a means of getting needs met, and not having better understanding or better ways of getting those needs met, not knowing proper resources, internal or external, to get the need met. And so these behaviors become, maybe very overwhelming or very loud in your life and disruptive in certain ways, or they create patterns that are creating conflict in your life. And so yes, we want to be understanding and aware of those behaviors, but not to label them as bad and not to try to eliminate parts of you, but understand how to work with these parts of you. And understanding that these are behaviors based on early adaptive and coping mechanisms from childhood. Understanding that mental health isn't, unfortunately, in the business of healing. It's in the business of numbing and maintaining systems that are broken, that maintain just, symptoms that we're feeling. So the mental health field overall is helping to maintain these broken systems that create these problems that I've talked about, that keep people stuck in their pain, and typically, just diagnosing people, putting people in a box, and then prescribing medication for them. And I have no problem with medication. Medication plays a role and it's important, but understanding that medication, especially for mental health challenges like anxiety and depression, is meant to be short term. It's meant to be prescribed for a year or two and allow the brain chemistry to respond to that and see how that goes, and see how ongoing therapy and learning strategies and different ways of healing can help. And getting to the root of what those behaviors are and what is creating the so-called negative symptoms, not just putting people in a box and making them feel shame that there's something wrong with them, that they experience anxiety, depression, or some of these challenges associated with trauma. Understanding that, medication has a role, but it's not meant to be the answer for everything, and it's not meant to be something that is on long term forever. Prescription medicines for mental health being 5, 10, 15 years and not actually having improvement for people, that's a broken system. And me being included in that system, I started to feel very out of alignment and out of integrity, feeling like we are failing people. I am failing people by trying to uphold this system. And that's one of the reasons why I left, being able to work with people more on a full wholeness instead of trying to limit them into this box that society wants to put people in. And so understanding that there are options outside of medication, understanding the education and awareness of how you operate and that nothing is wrong with you at your core is so important. And so the third point that I want to make of why therapy and traditional mental health will not help you heal is that talking about what happened to us simply isn't the answer. That talking about what happened can sometimes actually re-traumatize us, especially depending on who we're sharing that information with. That not everybody is safe and capable of hearing our story, and that we need to be aware of how we can re-traumatize ourselves or simply keep this wound very fresh by retelling it over and over again. And, in not just kind of target this experience in a way that's actually effective, in a way that holds the space of all of you to exist and doesn't make you wrong or the experience wrong, but helps you understand it, then we can actually move past that wound. And you're not stuck in this pattern of needing to see a therapist over and over again and simply just talk about what happened without having anything actually change, without having anything actually be different within you. Talking about it isn't enough for things to actually change. Understanding how you operate, these different parts of you that are showing up, and how those parts can play a role in your life, giving them an effective role to play, and befriending them is how we do the deeper healing work. Being able to see a healer who can hold a space for all of you and understanding not just the mental health challenges that come up and the thought patterns that might be present, but also how they relate to the behavioral or the body sensations in a bigger sense, and how your soul and the soul work that you came here to do is also related to all of those different things. That's something that traditional talk therapy cannot really hold the space for, because it's so much bigger than the box of therapy and what is, ethically allowed to be spoken in that, in that container, and what, so many of the constructs that therapists are held to of not being able to show up authentically as themselves and having to be this kind of neutral sounding board and space for what you experienced. Instead, as a spiritual healer, I'm able to show up fully with you, all of myself, all of me. And that's not to say that I'm here to take up the space from you, but that I can show up with the fullness of who I am in this space to be able to help you in the way that actually is effective, in a way that actually targets where your work is, and getting to the heart of your wounds and what your soul ultimately came here to do. Being able to understand the context of those wounds and how and why they played out in this life for you to do the ultimate work that you are just now getting started with. It's actually really exciting. And I understand also terrifying at times. So what does help us heal is understanding this brain and body connection to our soul, understanding how our body has actually, we've lived in this body in numerous lives before. The body that you have in this life is one of the bodies that you have ultimately the strongest connection with, and you feel really good in this body. That might not be to say that you are always comfortable in this body, but that this body is an important part of your role in this life, especially if you're a woman. We're in the time of the rising feminine, so women do have a really important role to play in this time period, and so really connecting to that. understanding how frequently our fear that we experience in our body is misread. It's misread based on generational trauma, generational wounding that gets passed down through our genetics, through our DNA. This is known as epigenetics. Scientists have shown it goes back 7 generations in your DNA right now is stored. And so understanding how that trauma gets passed down, understanding the larger context of how that trauma gets passed down through you and how it shows up in your life, through your conditioning, through your patterns, understanding how, some souls came here to heal their lineage that they are actually related to, that they have spent numerous lives in, and some souls came here from outside of that lineage, specifically to heal that lineage. And so they might not be, they might not always feel connected to the people that they came into this life with, their parents, their family, their siblings, because they maybe just came into this lineage to do some deep healing. And so if that resonates with you, then you definitely want to keep listening, because the program that I built is specifically for women like you to be able to help heal these wounds in a bigger sense, in our generational wounds. So understanding how, specific families have different karma that needs to be cleared and different, experiences that will show up in our patterns and our conditioning, to be able to really do the deep work that is actually needed to heal, understanding these larger systems that are at play within us and also the world that we live in. And that's something that traditional mental health doesn't take into account and doesn't help people, empower people to feel strong in their ability to advocate for themselves. It's so much having to advocate for themselves and not actually getting the crucial information they need to understand how they operate, and not being stuck in this system that is really shaming by putting people in a box and diagnosing them and making it seem that something is wrong with them, instead of understanding the broken systems that we exist in our society. And so knowing that we suffer the most ultimately when we suffer alone, when we are alone in our pain, when we don't feel valued, appreciated, seen, heard, or respected in our experience, in the suffering that we had with our wounds. And, understanding that all of you has a right to exist. No part of you is wrong. There are reasons why things play out in your life the way that they do. Things don't have to be as challenging as they have been in your life. And the work that I do in Golden Soul Alchemy helps you understand all of the layers of this that are at play. Who you are and your behaviors and your patterns and your thoughts and your limiting beliefs, and how those are ultimately inherited and passed down from your parents, from your grandparents, from your great-great-grandparents, and so on and so forth. And what might be behind those things in a bigger way, so that you can ultimately release the emotional attachment that you have to them and not feel so weighed down by these experiences that you've had in your life. Understanding that although they were painful for you and overwhelming for you, there's nothing wrong with you. So understanding that, traditional therapy, it doesn't help us collectively heal, because it keeps people stuck in these broken systems without actually doing anything to change the systems. This is one of the problems that I have, and this is one of the reasons why I didn't feel in integrity anymore, continuing to be in this world that ultimately doesn't account for all of the things that cause depression and anxiety within somebody, and the broken system that we exist in which causes many of those problems. So with the work that I do, I really focus on grounded spiritual teachings, including psychology, and being able to combine the best of these worlds and create a connection for mind, body, heart, and soul, for all parts of you to exist, all beautiful parts. And understanding how we can gain wisdom from your past experiences to give context to them and help you shift your perspective around all the things that you have experienced and how those relate to your family experiences as well, and how your parents passed on certain things to you. understanding that you are a true warrior if you are a cycle breaker, if you came into your family in order to heal specific things. You know, trauma continues to get passed down until somebody is aware and says no more. And so if you are that person, you are who I created my Golden Soul Alchemy program for. This is a sacred 16-week container, teachings from me that we meet every single week. And we touch on different aspects of you and who you are in your healing journey. We get to the core and the heart of your wounds and create a non-judgmental space and community for women to heal together. This is beautiful, sacred work that I am so grateful to be able to do. It's such... it really is such a gift, and I just genuinely love this work, and I love the women that I get to work with. I'm so, it is such an honor for me to do that work, and just, it lights me up to be able to hold this space for you. And so if this is something that you're interested in, being able to do this deep dive healing and really get to the heart of your pain in a targeted and effective way that teaches you about yourself and how to understand yourself better and align with your soul's unique and beautiful journey here on this world, then the link in my bio, you can apply through there and find out all sorts of information. I'm so excited to have you join me in this live today. If you are watching later, just share some comments and let me know that you saw later, or any questions that you might have. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.